And I thought, well, let me see what I can do. There are 3 clarinets in the major symphony orchestra and a bass clarinet. Bass clarinet's no problem, it's down below. But the other 2 clarinets might get in the way of the soloist in terms of the hearing because they sound exactly the same. They won't play to here. Now, my brass are my loudest problem. The trumpets there are 4 trumpets in the New York Philharmonic. Why don't I cancel out 2 until near the end and just have 2 play? That'll cut the trumpet sound in half for the soloist. Then I thought the French horns, well, the New York Philharmonic has 6 French horns, as do the big major orchestras. That really can get in the way of a soloist. And I only need the French horn melodically, perhaps. I can use other brass lower to do these other stuff. So let me take 5 French horns and not use them at all until the last 5 minutes. So I subtracted those players, and I said, okay, now this is what I have. So that means for the first movement, and for the second movement, and for part of the third movement, these players are just going to sit there. And that led me to think, and again, it isn't the kind of thinking that happens in a 10-minute period. It's the kind of thinking that happens over weeks and weeks of mulling this over and writing it down. But it occurred to me then, okay, if these players are not going to play till the last 5 minutes, why do they have to sit in the chairs not playing all that time? It'll be distracting and they're going to get bored, and I can use them, maybe can I use them someplace else? And then the idea occurred to me, well, what would happen if I took those players and I put them all around the hall, in back of the audience and other places, so that when they came in, it was actually dealing with quadraphonic sound, let's say, the idea of space and sound, not just left and right, but all around. And I like that idea a lot. And I thought about it, and then I said, let me then, before I write this piece, let me design where the players are going to sit and how they're going to react. From that, I drew, and I'll show you, this is the drawing, the original drawing, which is in the music. So I'll just try and draw this rather rapidly for you. But you see, this is the stage and this is the hall, okay? So my thought was, okay, here's the stage, and here's the hall, which has various shapes, but I was thinking at that particular time of Avery Fisher Hall, because that's where the Philharmonic were playing. So I used that as my standard. In other halls, we make little adjustments. And I said, okay, now I've got 2 clarinets. I've got 2 trumpets. I've got 5 horns put there. So what I ended up doing and thought about it was, okay, let me take the 5 horns first. Where do I put 5 horns? Well, I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In other words, they ring the audience. And you know, in Avery Fisher Hall, they have the first boxes. There's the orchestra level and the first boxes. So I said, okay, why don't I put those in the first boxes? That way they could play, and the orchestra's here, and the sound would be coming from different points, left, right, from the back to the audience. And then I said, okay, that takes care of my horns. Now my trumpets, well, what would happen if I put them together and put them on the next tier of boxes, way in the back here? So, instead of putting them apart, I put them together, second tier. And that took care of them, and I said, now, they're in the center. They're all the way around. I probably need a hard left and a hard right. What would happen if I went to the very top of the hall where they have the score reading desks? Because in Avery Fisher, they have, in the very top here, they have some desks for score reading. So students can come and put their scores down and look at here. So what if I put them all the way up there, on the very top of the hall? So I put a clarinet here and a clarinet there. Okay, this is supposed to be clarinet. Left and right rear. Now, this is still not, no music has been written yet. But this is going to change things, because what it means is that when I'm in the first movement and the second movement, I don't have a second horn or a third horn. I don't have another clarinet. I have two trumpets, but I don't have any more. So I have to know this before I write the piece. Otherwise, I'd write the piece and then I'd be stuck and have to go back and rewrite the whole piece without it. So this kind of planning is important for that kind of reason too. Okay, so then I said, all right, that's terrific. Now I can do things all the way going left. I could probably have a note start here, and play here, 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 and move that way. I could have people play here on this side and that side, back and forth. I could have people play from here to the trumpets on the stage, so they could call back and forth this way, right? So that gave me the idea, well, if they call back and forth, let's say I have the trumpets here play da-da-da-da-da, then go da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. If they can do that, I can do other things on the stage. So why don't I now see if I can make things move on the stage in the planning. So this is what I decided to do. First of all, timpani. There's a set of timpani on one side, and I put another set on the other side. So there'd be left and right timpani. They could play, they could answer, they could play, they could answer. Okay? My trumpets are in the usual position here, but usually the trombones and the tubas are right next to them. What happens if I take the trumpets and put them there and put the trombones and the tuba, put them on this side, left and right, so the players could go this way and back and forth to the soloist. Now I've got choirs on the back of the hall this side, the stage this side and this side, and the soloist in the center, and I've got the same thing out there. Then what would happen if I took all the strings, the cellos sit here, the violas sit here, the second violins sit here, and the first violins sit here. What would happen if I numbered the stands 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. By a stand, I mean 2 chairs with a music stand. So it's 2 people in a stand. That's how they sit. And the strings do that so that one can turn the page while the other one plays, because the strings sometimes play so much that they play right through page turns. So for years and years, it's been, while you get one flutist with one stand, another one with another one, this is two players to a stand. So 2 players on alternates. That means I could begin, say, a single note here, like a G. I could move it to here, and move it to here, and slowly move it from here to here by changing the stands. I could also take it from the center and move it this way, or move it this way, or move it this way. And this became very interesting to me. So I got all that done, and then went back to the first movement and started thinking about it. Now I've got a different orchestra because I've got my brass divided, trumpets here, trombones here. I've got less than the full orchestra here, and I'd be writing the first movement, which, as I mentioned, has to do with the cadenzas. So going back now, I'm going to erase all this. Let's put this here. 1. To be named. Now, I had to pick a name. I knew the elegy was the elegy. I knew cadenzas was cadenzas. What was this going to be called? Well, the first thing I wanted was a name that described the idea of sound from various directions. Antiphonal. That was the first part. Does everybody know sort of what antiphonal means? Antiphonal is like in the old days with Gabrielli, they had this church, San Marco Church, that had two stalls for the chorus on the left and the right. He would write music with the left sang, and then the right sang, and then they both sang, and vice versa. And he got all sorts of combinations of left and right. Antiphonal music comes from different directions and very often calls to each other. That was the first part. Now, I still haven't written the piece, but I'm deciding what will the clarinet do here. If it can't be antiphonal itself, it has to have some thematic material. What kind of thematic material will I give this clarinet for the last movement? And the process there was, well, if I give the clarinet in the first movement these unmeasured, very, very rapid notes, like that, then what I can say for the clarinet in the last one is like a motor jack, almost like a motor going which would give me a very strict, even pulse. There was a reason I wanted to do that, and that is the following. The clarinet, when it plays syncopations, if it does syncopations, always sounds like jazz. And I love jazz, but it's a very strong broth, jazz. It's very, very strong. Copeland said formerly, he was said in a book of his, that he had to give up writing the jazz influenced pieces he did because the influence was so strong that all the pieces became jazz pieces. Instead, what he did was he used the kind of rhythmic impetus of jazz and the harmonic world of jazz and the bending of tones in his concert music. That is, he didn't use it consciously. Consciously, he did not use it after a certain point. And I felt that if I have repeated notes like this machine gun fire, that will not be the syncopated things that jazz has, and I will not tip this over into a jazz concerto last movement, which a lot of clarinet concertos are, I might add, like 80% of them. It's sort of like the guitar, which automatically sounds Spanish if you strum it. And I had to work, when I did my guitar concerto, to figure a way that I didn't write a Spanish concerto because that meant it was a genre of Spanish concerto, and I didn't want to just do that. So in this case, I said if they just repeat the notes, the term for that is toccata. Toccata comes from a keyboard technique, meaning toccare, to touch. It's a repeated note figure, da 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 da. So if I have an antiphonal toccata, I know my soloist can play toccata music, that is repeated note music, and will get me out of that, and then the antiphonal stuff will all be around that. So now I have my titles, I had a map, and I'm ready to begin my first movement. Now, considering time, I'm going to play you little bits of some of the movements. If you can, this is really a piece to hear live, I must be honest with you. It's even in surround sound recording, which barely exists now, this probably wouldn't work as it can live. Because when you hear things around you that way in the live space, it's quite extraordinary. So if you can make it to go, it's a good idea Saturday, since they're doing it here, to go. It's not the perfect hall, because as you know, it's really a convention center, so it doesn't have any bloom or echo that one would like, but it is very clear, and you will hear especially the last movement, in a way that you can't possibly hear now. So now comes the first movement. I decided, as I told you, to do this cadenza passage, and to have the cadenza be very soft. And because it was so soft and whispery, I called it ignus fatus, which is the will of the wisp in Latin. The will of the wisp are faint marsh gases that just sort of, like little spurts, appear. If you look into a marsh, you'll see little phosphorescent gases, and they disappear. So this is like the sound of clarinet, it comes out of nothing, back, nothing, and so forth. It plays very fast. And so, the first page of this music, again, I don't have a projector here, I'd show you, this is the first breath. You see, it's like 128 notes, and it's the first breath. And in this cadenza, what I do is I write all those notes, and I put a little slash up here. You know what a grace note is with grace note slashes? But I put it on 128 notes, which means play them as fast as possible. So this cadenza, the soloist plays as fast as possible. Different people play it at different speeds. Stanley plays it at an astronomical speed. And these three are his first breath. Then the flutes come in after he does this, and then he continues moving this way. I can play you this cadenza, and I think you can see it isn't a cadenza about beats, like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a cadenza about fluttering about, flying in almost darkness, because it's so soft. And then I'll play it up to when the orchestra comes in. Same notes of that run, but it's playing them very slowly on top of each